Welcome back to PPCM's Painful Truth. Today's guest, Hillary Seyler.
Oh, there you are.
Hi.
Thank you so much for your time today.
You're
Welcome. So, the good thing is that I don't really know your story. So, why don't you take me back from the first moment were you educated with peripartum cardiomyopathy, PPCM, during pregnancy, or did you
No,
find out at a life threat?
it was a life-threatening situation when I figured it out. So, my heart baby is 11 years old, and I had him in January of 2011. And a couple weeks after I had him, I started having some gallbladder issues and some pain. And so I went in and saw my doctor, and he was like, yeah, your gallbladder's really inflamed. You have a bunch of gallstones. You have to go get it taken out. And so I live in a really small town, and I was able to just like go across the street to the surgeon's office and schedule an appointment. And then within a week or two, I had surgery to remove my gallbladder. And while I was in recovery after my surgery, they noticed something wrong with my EKG. I had a left bundle branch block. And so they thought, well, maybe she's had this is like something she's had all her life. And so I happened to have an EKG from when I was in the military many, many years before, and I didn't have that left bundle branch block. Excuse my cat.
I have animals. I have a cat, dog, fish.
So it wasn't on my EKG. So they sent me to a local doctor because where I live is a pretty rural area. I live in Alaska. I live in a tiny little town. The biggest city that's close to us is about 3 hours away. And so at the time, there was not a cardiologist in the area. So I went just to see an internal medicine doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And he did some tests, and he couldn't figure out what was wrong. So they sent me up to Anchorage, which is the city that has the cardiologist. And I got, at first they thought maybe I had a mini heart attack at some point. But then I had a cardiac MRI, and he diagnosed me with PPCM. At that time, he said, yes, this is what this is.
So this was by not your pregnancy obstetrician. This is diagnosed from the ER.
Yeah, it was after my surgery. Yeah, I had, then I went to the cardiologist. They referred me to the cardiologist. This is my doctor who he passed away a few years ago, but he was he's a fantastic doctor, and I really love him a lot. But he, it wasn't something he ever talked about. And I've never actually met anyone else with PPCM in person. I have never met anyone that has my condition in my area. And I don't know if that's because it's just
not diagnosed.
Not diagnosed. People they're not testing for it. Yeah.
Well, that's the issue.
Right.
The issue is that what we're dealing with is that there is zero diagnosis of this.
Right.
Obstetricians, midwives, even in the training books for the curriculum.
Right. So, and it's just a blood test. If they just implemented that blood test, towards the end of pregnancy.
NT-proBNP test is only $15 out of pocket.
Yeah.
And when they're saying they need a lot of money to get this going, and I'm thinking it's $15 out of pocket, but women are being denied this test.
Right. So every pregnant woman that I meet, I tell her to ask her doctor for a BNP test.
And then she's sent home. Yeah. You have to go through, when you're pregnant, you're supposed to rely on your obstetrician, your birthing professional. But if your life is at a threat, because we're no longer dealing with the baby, we're dealing with the mommy, you have to go through the internal medicine doctor first. The internal
Right.
medicine doctor gives you the cardiologist, and from there, you're able to get your NT-proBNP test number. But by that point, you're suffering.
Right, because what happened with me was by the time I was diagnosed with PPCM, my
Right.
original ejection fraction with my very first echocardiogram was 40%. And that
Okay.
was in
Wow. Okay.
March of 2011. By the beginning of May of 2011, my ejection fraction was down to 12%.
What were your symptoms during pregnancy?
I did not have a lot of symptoms during pregnancy, just like the kind of typical things that you would just think are related to pregnancy. I had a little bit of swelling, not too much. It wasn't extreme. I had shortness of breath and, fatigue, but it wasn't really until after I had my baby that I started really developing symptoms.
Yeah, which is really common because it's an induced heart failure. It's a pregnancy-induced heart failure. So once you have the baby is when it peaks. So usually it takes 6 days. For me, it took I peaked the entire way. I never stopped peaking until my times of death, literally. But it does peak 6 days after. How many days after did yours really start to peak? Do you remember?
I don't. It's been so long. And all that time was all such a blur to me.
Yeah.
It's so fuzzy and it's really, really hard to remember.
It's a shame though that, you say that it's like a blur because it's been so long, but there has been awareness in over a decade, obviously.
Right.
And there just hasn't been enough conversations about this where women are actually being diagnosed during the induced, complication as opposed to, after giving birth. And it's a real shame because I feel like at this point, we've come so far, leaps and bounds with so much little areas of everything. Like why, we have so many associations that really are dived into this as like their main career. Like I just don't understand why this has not been solved in over 11 years. And for you to, be like, wow, it was so long ago. And here are girls that I'm interviewing that are like, 18 years, 20 years old.
Oh, I know.
And they're still having the same symptoms as you. They say, oh, I don't have much pregnancy complications. It didn't start until after. And then, I coded. And then, these stories are just.
Yeah, they're horrible.
And there's so many of them.
And I can't
over
imagine.
A decade.
I was in my 30s when it happened to me. I can't imagine being 20 years old and going through this. I had to have an emergency surgery and have a pacemaker placed.
Yeah, I did. I had a defibrillator.
Yeah, I have a pacemaker and defibrillator. Mine also paces. Yeah. Mine paces 97% of the time. So I'm 100% pacemaker dependent. I actually just had my battery replaced in September. I'm on my second battery.
How many times does let's say the shortest of the wire or how many times did you have to go in and replace either the battery or
this is my first battery replacement at 10 and a half years out.
Okay.
So the battery has lasted a really long time.
Okay.
You're frozen.
Can you hear me?
Oh, there we go. Yep.
Okay.
You were frozen for a minute. Okay.
Sorry.
So my battery lasted about 10 and a half years. This is my second battery. I had to have a new lead put in with this one. And
how's your scar tissue?
I don't have a lot of scar tissue. It's
wonderful.
I've been really fortunate. My scar healed really nicely both times. It's still a tiny bit red because it hasn't been that long, but I'm still actually in heart failure. My doctor has told me multiple times I will never be fully recovered. So even with my pacemaker, I will never be fully recovered. The highest my ejection fraction has gotten since having my pacemaker placement has been about 45%. And I sit between 40 and 45%. So, so this
Is there anything that you do to maybe raise that? Like at home, other than like, let's say beta blockers or anything outside of the medical? I know it's hard in Alaska because it's cold.
yeah, not really. I mean, I'm trying to stay healthy. This last couple of years has been incredibly difficult. I've had a lot of health issues. And I don't know.
I asked, I don't know. When I think of Alaska, I mean, I know you guys must have like an indoor pool, right?
We
like
do.
Rec
Yes.
centers.
Yes. And there is.
So when my defibrillator, I was at, my EF percent was 0. Okay.
Uh-huh.
I had my times of death. I was pronounced dead over 30 minutes each cardiac arrest. When it was 10%.
Mhm.
I was at 10% EF.
Mhm.
And when I had my defibrillator in, I was just, it was hard to breathe. It was hard to move. But I didn't baby myself because I knew that I, as a dancer my whole life and as a fitness person my whole life, that I was strong enough to at least try to help myself bring back my athletic heart. So I went into the pool. I had lifeguards around me because my husband was like, he felt safe because I had, I went to a rec pool at the time.
Uh-huh.
And they had like water aerobics and things like that. But I always had my foam weights. This way, I was always lifting up, less pressure on the heart, but I would be moving around. So then I started, I went from a walk, literally like kind of like a crawl, to like a walk, to joining the other women in the fitness class who were more like me because they were like, oh, I got a pain right here. And I'm like, oh, I got a pain right here. So it was like they were my people as opposed to going to the gym with, girls, women my age. So I was, but don't let them fool you. They rehabilitated me, those women.
I was never offered any cardiac rehabilitation. Ever.
That's terrible. And you know what? I wasn't either, but I knew that something had to be applied because our heart is a muscle.
Right.
And with muscle, there's memory, which can cause relapse. So in order to avoid that, I got my EF percent today. As of like 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, but today my EF percent is now up to 71.
See, and that's fantastic. Mine's never been that high.
But I believe that I believe that you can. There are ways to open up that breathing passage. And I am a real believer in, in opening up, your body inside to be able to breathe. And I think that when you have a flow, a movement, and you're like in the water where it's less impact on your back, on your heart, on your ankles, and these are things that I think should be applied, not just, once or twice a week, but every day, at least, for, 20 minutes, introverted with heart failure, you shouldn't go longer than 20 minutes if you're like moving around and pedaling and stuff or whatnot, but break it up. Maybe do 45 minutes a day, but break it up. And I feel like that could, really get the EF percent higher. If you don't do anything, then your heart is always going to stay rested. And I don't feel like common sense with cardiac rehab, you can't expect for it to raise itself, and medicine and beta blockers can only make your heart say thank you so much.
Right.
That am a true, I'm a, not just a believer, but I'm living proof,
Uh-huh.
that, you know, with working with your body and meeting your body at that level, if your heart EF is 45, I can almost like, I want to like make a bet with you. Like if you were to get your body and just start, you know, with those foam weights, they're only like 10, $12 on Amazon, you know, pool foam weights, and you get your body in there and you start to just do a little more, you know, each time, go back and forth, go round and round, go front and back. I guarantee even you might even get up to a 47 or 48. And I'm telling you, every number that goes up, you really
Every little
can't.
bit counts.
It really, really does.
Yeah, I've had I spent 6 months in the pool for some other health issues. I had to have physical therapy. We are pretty active. I have 5 kids. Two of them are adults, and so I also have 2 grandchildren. We're typically pretty happy, but I've never done anything specifically targeted to improve specifically for my heart, you know,
Your
like
breathing,
no
your deep
actual cardiac
breathing.
rehab, yeah, type stuff. Because you know, first of all, it was never offered to me, and I kind of just for a long time, I didn't even realize that was an option. I was probably 5 years post-diagnosis when I realized that other women were getting cardiac rehab afterwards. And I was like, I
Yeah,
didn't
that's where
realize.
self-advocacy, I mean, this whole disease is about self-advocacy. I
Mhm.
mean, from the very beginning. So, yeah, you really have to like advocate for yourself and know that, okay, if I'm not receiving something, then I need to do it for myself.
Right.
And
Right.
I was offered the car at one point. I think it was already 2 or 3 years out. I was offered the cardiac, and I said, you know, I know what to do. I
Mhm.
know what I need to do for myself. I
Mhm.
know that it is a challenge because, you know, life, and there's so much going on, and you're not just the mama, but you're the graham cracker. So it's like, you know, you are the
Yeah.
everything, which is what I used to call my mom. But it's kind of like you owe it to yourself even 20 minutes a day to give yourself just that movement that your heart needs so you can stay longer, so you can be with your grandkids.
Right.
And I feel like when there's a difference between being active and targeting that muscle.
Right.
Like
Exactly.
when I do my fitness routine, and I started on for Mondays, and I'm like, okay, let's, you know, you have to really target certain muscle areas of your butt or your thighs or whatever you want to
Right. If
work
you're
on.
working on specific stuff. Mhm.
Right. And you can't get that just from running.
And it
And you
applies,
can't-
the same thing applies to your heart. You have to, if you, yeah.
So it makes me sad that you say, oh, it's probably not going to ever recover, because I feel like you have still, you know, a long life to live, but you can also extend that. I don't necessarily believe that, only because I've witnessed it. So that's why I asked, what are you doing for your, specifically catering to your heart muscle, your breathing techniques,
Mhm.
with your stretch, you know, like feeling the stretch, feeling the techniques, but also taking in that deep, satisfying breath while you stretch. That is what your heart needs to raise for your EF percent, I believe. I'm not a
Okay.
doctor, and I'm just a survivor,
It's
but
just what's worked for you.
it's worked for me. It's
Uh-huh.
worked for other girls,
Mhm.
other women that you know, on Mondays I started, it's called Mom Day Fitness, and I do it, you know, I do it because it's good for the consistency, it's good for the women, and I feel like, you know, we can't baby ourselves. We can't think like we can never recover, because I feel like that already is planting all of that. When I feel like, okay, I went from a 10% and now I'm at 71% because they all told me something and I just was like, no, I'm not listening. I know I can get my body and my heart. And I struggled for a little while. I mean, I lost both my parents 18 months apart, 4 months after my heart surgery. And it was like I just had a baby. So it was really hard for me to come out of that funk. But I knew what I needed to do for myself I had to pull myself out of it.
Right.
You know, literally. Went on medicine. I had to like figure it out. But when people say to you, like doctors, when they were all telling me that I was fine, and then clearly I was not, I was dying again. When they pulled that device out of me, my heart was blue black, my heart was shrunk, they pulled out the wire, my heart was pumping red. I was allergic to the components.
Yeah, I think I read something or watched something about your experience with your pacemaker.
And I just stayed strong because I went to 7 electrophysiologists, over 4 cardiologists, and they all said the same thing, and they were all wrong. I was right because I know my body.
Right.
And so, I can't, when they say things that, the medical community, it's like, okay, yeah, take in what you feel like applies to you and what is textbook. And, I'm the type of woman where, I was raised in New Jersey. I had 2 very strong, parents, very strong minded parents. My father was the president, the CEO of the New York Stock Exchange, the Philadelphia Stock Exchange. They raised me to be very loyal, honest, and just, call bullshit, if it needs to be called. And so everything since the moment I got pregnant and everything that the medical community has said to me or has not said, because what we don't know can hurt us and what we do know can save us. And we should have that option to say whether we want it or not. But to not know about the NT-proBNP test, to say that we cannot fully recover when that is not true. We can't rely on the medical community to meet us at the level that we need to meet ourselves. And I think that's when it becomes a little bit more, again, self-advocacy. If you start feeling more tired, if you're starting to feel like your heart is slowing down, I feel like then that's a sign that your body's telling you, and it's saying, listen, maybe not to like sleep more, but maybe do more breathing and stretching routines.
Yeah, that was one thing that was nice, that my doctor listened to me in the beginning when I said, because initially after diagnosis, they sent me home with an ACE inhibitor and beta blocker. And they said, some women do really well on this. Let's try this first. And then it was a couple of weeks later, I couldn't even walk up the stairs. And I called my doctor's office and they said, why don't you come in tomorrow? Can you come to Anchorage tomorrow? Which was a little bit of a challenge for me because of just the distance.
Right.
That I had to go. And when I got up there, then they said, oh, you're not going home. We're going to put a pacemaker in. And so I stayed there that night and had a pacemaker implanted the next day because my ejection fraction had dropped so much. And my heart was so enlarged. And so that's what they did at that point. And but I do feel like the ball has been dropped a lot by the medical professionals afterwards. It was kind of like, oh, you have a pacemaker now. And I still
see you later.
Yeah,
Have
exactly.
A nice
You're
life.
going to be fine.
Right.
I still get an echocardiogram once a year. And I still see my cardiologist once a year for my annual. And then, I just had my battery replaced, which they were right on top of when my battery got low. They had me scheduled. and in to get a replacement within, I think it was 6 weeks from the time they called me to tell me my battery had dropped down to a percentage that I could get it replaced. And then from the time I had my surgery.
Well, they didn't just drop the ball after the fact. They dropped the ball during
pregnancy.
Because this would have never have happened to us if we were actually diagnosed during pregnancy to be able to be treated. But the issue is that women are not being diagnosed. Right. And I feel like because they know that PPCM is responsible for 1 in 20 heart transplants when it's all preventable as early as 10 weeks pregnant, but they know this. That's what really makes me upset, because it's like they dropped the ball on all levels.
Everyone.
Every
across the board.
Every ER hospital that has witnessed and known this, because they're the ones that are saving the lives. They're the ones that are seeing this happen in the ER.
Right. And I've heard, I mean, like I said, I've never personally met somebody with PPCM before, but I've been involved with online communities.
How would you even know?
Yeah.
How would they even know?
Right. I've been involved with the online communities and read the stories about all the different women who have had, and the story sounds about the same. I was having these symptoms. I told my doctor something was wrong. They said, no, that's just pregnancy. You know, and it's swelling in pregnancy. You know, you feel fatigue.
Interviewing over 100 women already at this point. Mm-hmm. I don't even know the count number. Okay. So I'm just going to say over 100. It could be even over 200. I just have been interviewing women left and right about, you know, I slowed it down because I'm in that pageant June, because I was asked, and when I have to do it. I was, you know, it's just something that I feel compelled to do. I'm not but hearing all the women speak one after another, doesn't matter. Women that have survived this and they've lived over 30 years, they've come through. Women that are young and they have a baby literally in their arms as they're talking to me. There has been absolute zero change in over 30 years, and all of the stories are exactly
the same.
To the same.
Yeah.
I relate with all of them. So for me, hearing everybody's story, it's heartbreaking. It relives. And so, you know, I am not perfect by any means. I don't say things that are, you know, perfect, but I am true to this disease. I am loyal and beyond defending women survivors like you, like myself, like other women that are not even born yet, that are your children, are your children's children, you know, your grandchildren. This is beyond unacceptable on all levels, for the fact that the statistics cannot be accurate if there's zero diagnosis. And so I thank you, you know, for coming through today, telling me your story, showing up, and, you know, being, you know, having these hard conversations, because
if we don't talk about it, nothing's ever going to change.
Nothing will ever be changed. And that's where I said, you know, to my husband too, I said, you know, when Leah Newman, she died at Cedars-Sinai, where I gave birth and I coded, and, you know, and I just said, you know, they weren't listening. They're not listening. Nothing's happening. So doing this series and showing, whether people listen or not, whether people watch it or not, it's going to be out there that each woman literally is experiencing the same symptoms all over the world, but
and they're all telling their doctors the same thing.
And there is zero change. Something's going to connect, because we are talking about it, because we're not sitting here, just behind our closed door and talking about it with our neighbor next door.
Right.
It's really gonna get out there. And
Right.
so that's why when I, talk to women, I say, thank you so much for your time. It's because this is what we have to put into it in order to create real change. Is putting
Right.
in the time.
No, exactly. And, since I've discovered the online groups, I've tried to stay active in them. Where I'm at, I kind of feel like I'm in a bubble. I'm missing a lot of what's happening because,
We all are.
yeah,
We're
yeah,
all stuck. All women in America, most definitely in America, globally, yes, but more so in America, because we don't have the diagnosis in America. Other countries do. They have it during pregnancy. We don't. We're
because
saved
they're
in a life
offering
threat.
that test. Is that why? Because they're offering the blood test?
They're not even just offering the blood test. They also have the kits and the instrument to the toxic fluid and the placental growth test, which is the SFLT1, which stands for cardiotoxic, and the -1 stands for genetic mutation, genes that have this, as well as the PIGF, which is an actual blood test. It's called the PIGF, which is the placental growth factor. That's a kit and an instrument through like Odyssey. It's a company. I called them, talked to the reps. FDA has not approved it in America. It is approved in Canada. It is approved in Great Britain. It is approved in other places in other world. So they're being more diagnosed during pregnancy. And then with that diagnosis, they take it to the cardiologist and they get into the hospital, and then they're treated and they're cared for during pregnancy. Women in America, and the first thing I always say is, were you diagnosed during pregnancy or at a life threat? I started because I hear the difference. I hear the pattern. I hear it from the other women. I hear it from the women in America, and I hear it from other women in other countries. And so I feel like, wow, not only are women defeated everywhere, but women in America are most definitely most defeated, because women are saying, their words are, they're being diagnosed at a life threat in the ER. Women in Canada, same horrible experience, no difference. I mean, it's horrible what these women go through, but they're saved a little sooner.
Right.
They don't have the same. Some have a new heart. Some have this, but that's part of the disease, but at the same time, there's a different voice pattern. And unless people listen, you can't turn off. You can't listen to 2 minutes of a conversation. I know it's like an hour. It's like, people just need to like put it in their ears and drive or go to, listen, because things come up also later in the conversations that you would never even, that really puts this PPCM puzzle together.
The timing it's all about timing, because it's a difference between life and death. I mean, I think about regularly. I think about, if I had not had my gallbladder taken out, what would have happened?
Right.
Like I feel like that was like a blessing that I had my gallbladder removed, and they discovered that I had this issue, and then I was treated for it. But if I hadn't had that done, I probably would have just been told repeatedly, oh, it's normal for new mothers to have fatigue.
Or breastfeeding your baby, like that woman. I keep thinking about her. No symptoms, no nothing, breastfeeding her baby, and she ended up having cardiac arrest, Caesar, and was diagnosed. But she was fine until prior. That's why the blood test needs to be mandatory, because she had no symptoms or anything, and then she had cardiac death during breastfeeding her baby, and then diagnosed at the ER that she was PPCM.
Right.
I mean, I've heard all stories where the test is the only test that needs to be provided in order to really, really know and diagnosis and not misdiagnosis.
Yeah, it could be done multiple times throughout your pregnancy with all your regular blood tests that you have during your pregnancy. And there's no reason why it shouldn't be
And if people
provided
can't
to.
pay $15 for the test, I mean, they can come to the PPCM fund. They can
Right.
ask, a friend. I mean, $15 for a
It's
test
not,
is not
yeah.
that much to know if during pregnancy, if you are at the below 300 for an NT-proBNP test, the number.
Right. If you potentially are going to face a life-threatening event later on.
Right. I mean, it's all preventable with awareness, which is why I
Right.
don't understand why this has been, it's not it's not really like lives are priceless, but it doesn't cost anything to just provide the awareness, which is why I am really just like, I'm sensitive and frustrated with the American Heart Association. I know I'm supposed to love them and I'm supposed to be like, rah, rah, like my heart team and all of that and all the people and everybody. But I just like, I can't help, like, it's just inside of me where I just feel sick about why this has not been brought up. If
Right.
you've known
And
this
the
for over
American
30
Heart
years,
Association, the American
makes
Heart Association even says
billions.
that maternal death is the number one cause of death in the United States.
Yeah, and
Well,
just
it's
because you commit a crime, that doesn't mean, like, they're basically saying, oh, we've known about this. But so you
Right.
can't admit, and everyone's like, oh, they've known about it. Well, you can't admit it that you
and
have
then
done
not do
nothing.
anything about it. Yeah.
That you have done nothing in over 30 years and have known this. Like,
Mhm.
okay, so you're admitting it. And like people are not like, and they're like multi-million, and it doesn't cost. The wires are not connected. 2 and 2 does not equal 4. I'm completely disappointed and unaccepted. It's unacceptable for me. And I'm just the only one that has enough. Maybe I'm angry enough. Maybe I'm frustrated enough. Maybe I've heard too much to not be afraid to say it. Shame on them. I'm not afraid. It's unacceptable. I hear so many women that suffer, and it's medically proven that no woman should ever suffer or die unless she's never diagnosed or treated. So where a simple blood test is $15, there's no excuse.
Right, exactly.
Flat out. No excuse.
Yeah, and that was something, and I'm not even sure how far after my diagnosis that I figured out that there was a blood test for it, because no one is talking about it.
Right.
I mean, even my cardiologist who said, yes, this is what you have. And nobody said, all we have to do is check your blood. Right. There was never any discussion about that,
None.
I
simple
still haven't.
Blood test. I'm furious. Like I've been 5 years out, and I'm still like, well, I think because I'm still angry because my mom, she died of walking pneumonia. She was so worried about everything. I mean, like, I'm at the point where I'm finally waking up for the first time, and I'm just saying, I hear these women, these young women, young moms that are like so confused. They don't know what happened to them. They're if they die, their families contact me and saying, but she was so healthy,
right.
And then I hear, oh, we've known about this for over 30 years.
Right.
Okay. And no one's saying anything about that either.
And they're not doing anything about it.
Because they're a bit, why? Like, what is unless it happens to somebody and unless it happens to their children or to themselves, really people just don't understand how serious this is. So I think that you and I have covered like a lot of like venting ground on this, because it's all about the NT-proBNP test.
Right.
It's the only thing that America has. We don't have the SFLT1 or the PIGF.
Right.
Like Dr. Fetz says, I've called the reps. I keep calling them. It's not approved. If FDA does not approve it, The women are being sent home from the hospital. They're telling me that they don't have it at their labs, their lab core. So if they don't have it, then how can they get it? So
Right.
I'm really confused about that test. But if you were to research the SFLT1 and the PIGF, and you were to see the graph that Dr. Fett like clearly states, I mean, it's for preeclampsia. It's for, a lot of, preventions of awareness that could maybe eliminate the symptoms. I know preeclampsia is not really preventable, but if you cure the condition and you fix and you help the symptoms, it doesn't have to be so severe where like
Right.
a woman feels like she's going to literally burst from the inside out because
And those are usually also emergency situations.
absolutely
So,
the ER dropped the ball
it's frustrating.
beyond. And and again, like, I know there are some people that are probably not happy that I do speak up, or that I'm not afraid to say what's not acceptable, or, I give credit when credit's due. I'm a very I very much of a person where I lift others up. I never tear down, ever.
Mhm.
But when something is not right, and there's right and wrong,
It should be addressed.
I was not raised that way. I cannot just sit back and just say, this is unacceptable, but I'm not going to speak up.
Right.
Because I don't want people to not like me, or I don't want people to think bad of me, or I don't want people to, whatever. I don't care. I had my times of death called. My mother died. Like, I will say whatever it is that is wrong and that is right. And what I feel like is wrong is that there is not an entire curriculum chapter that is included about this disease from the ACOG. Isn't educated properly to midwives, doulas, to where they feel a simple blood test is another thing to fear, as opposed to something that can save a baby, that could save a mother.
Right. There's lots of testing done,
It's the prevention. It's not to scare,
right.
but it's not educated. So when they hear it from somebody like us, like survivors, they automatically go to, oh, this is just another thing to fear, or it's not joyful,
or it's not that common.
How do they know it's not common if there's no diagnosis? There is no real statistics on this disease, period. So when they say 2,000 cases a year, based on what? There's no diagnosis. There's no mandate.
It's very contradictory for the American Heart Association to say cardiac issues are the number one cause of maternal death in the United States, but then on the other hand, have doctors say, oh, you don't need to have this done. Well, heart problems,
when you go
are
to the American Heart Association, it should be right across. Get your NT-Pro BNP test.
Mm-hmm.
When you go to PPCMFUND.com, it's the very first thing that's mentioned.
Right.
That's what needs to be mentioned for women's heart health,
right,
across the board.
Right. You can't say this is the number one cause of maternal death, but not
give the prevention,
not do anything to prevent it.
Yeah. Not say it, not say
right.
the NT-Pro BNP test, not say that if you get the regular BNP, which is a brain natriuretic peptide test, which is a simple blood test that only costs $15. If it's just a regular BNP, it's below 99 is your number. It doesn't matter if you're -2, a 47, a 48. But once you hit 99, you need to get some sort of like Lasix, magnesium drip, beta blocker, things that need to be helped. If you're an NT-Pro BNP test and you get the full panel during pregnancy, it's any number below 300. Doesn't matter if you're a -5 or a 70. But they don't even tell you that. People don't know that. People don't know the numbers. They don't know what it means. They don't know what that number means, that it's how, you know, your levels are elevated, and it tells you how much elevation there is by that number. I mean, people really do not know. And that is where, in just less than 60 seconds of me saying that, they should have had a whole, like, I don't know, they have all these medication ad commercials where, like, you're walking on the beach and this will solve this, but you'll get liver failure, you'll get this, you'll get migraines, blah, 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 blah. Why don't they just say, have a family walk on the beach and be like, hey, get your NT-proBNP test, and, you know,
And
there'll
you
be
could
prevention.
prevent all of this happening in
It
the
doesn't
first
need to be
place.
made in a lab. It's not medicine. It's blood in your body.
Mhm.
And you don't know your number. And that's what is so frustrating, that the association has not made clear, has not articulated, and has not written on their websites, especially when it's Women's Heart Health Day. It's not mentioned. It's not mentioned about women's heart, but not specifically with women's pregnancy-induced heart. That's a whole other niche that they missed.
Yeah,
Literally.
no, they do. Because I don't think, I'm not sure I've ever seen anything specifically from the American Heart Association
Never.
that mentions it.
Never.
On all of their, you know,
I went back over 30 years.
there
I
may
went
have
back.
been, I mean, I've seen stories of women when it's Heart Month and Women's Heart Day talking. I've seen stories from women who have said, oh, this is what happened to me, but I don't think I've ever specifically seen anything directly from the American Heart Association.
Absolutely not. I have not either.
Mhm.
And we have to ask ourselves as women, why not?
Right.
Why? Does it come down to money? Does it come down to, I mean, why? Like, that's what I want to know. Like, were they paid not to? Were they paid to? No. I mean, like, we just don't know.
Right.
But there's,
I think it's just overlooked. It's one of those things that's like,
no, it can't be overlooked, because there are individuals out there, like an individual like you, like an individual like me, an individual at an ER, an individual at a doctor. Nobody has said anything.
mhm.
I don't know. It's very strange. It's one of these things where I can't wrap my brain around it, because it does not make sense. And usually I'm the person, you know, by nature, I'm a problem solver. I try making sense of things. I try putting pieces together, and I'm if I'm ever wrong, I'm the first one to say, I was wrong. We learn from our mistakes, but I haven't gotten there yet. I haven't felt like I'm wrong to speak, because in over 5 years,
Mhm.
5 years, not one obstetrician, not one nurse, nobody. The wires are not connected. Once they're educated, it's not applied. It's just, I don't know, lazy. I don't know what it is. I really don't. But we're talking about it, and that's what we're doing. So
And that's the only way
hopefully-
anything's going to change.
Yep. Well, I really do. I thank you for just, venting with me today, talking with me, and, learning about your situation, even that it was 11 years ago, and just bringing up all these feelings that there should have been change in a decade. And so you coming through, like, really shows that we are demanding change at this point.
Right. Exactly. That's what I'm hoping for. That's what I'm hoping this project that you have going on brings. So
Yeah, same. We're just being honest,
Uh-huh.
and hopefully it will, the truth will prevail and set us free. We don't, we want redemption, really.
Yeah.
We're not looking to, like, I feel like, I'm not looking to blame anybody at this point. I'm not
You just
looking
want to change.
I just, yeah, we need this to never, ever, ever, ever happen to a young, healthy, and, family that
Right.
will be destroyed when it can be prevented. So thank you.
Oh, you're
And
welcome.
yeah, and
Thank
I
you.
will, yeah, keep, we have over 3,000 watch times on YouTube. We need about 1,000 more watch
Uh-huh.
hours. So if any of them pop up, if you're in your car, just have it
Just
going.
keep watching it.
Yeah, just have it going. Maybe comment on the one with Dr. Watson I just put up. I was so grateful. She is basically the American Heart Association. Well, she's the director of the Barbara Streisand's Women Heart Association for Heart Health.
Uh-huh.
And she did my appointment, and she let me video it.
Oh, good. That's
So that was
nice.
the one that was the most recent one. I haven't sent it to her yet, so I'm planning on it. But yeah, if you haven't watched it, it's only like 4 minutes. I think it's
Yeah,
really
I don't
short.
think I haven't seen the most recent one, so I'll go back and take a look at it.
Yeah, she would appreciate that. I haven't sent it yet because I'm waiting for more comments, more people to you know, show some support with a cardiologist that is collaborating with the obstetricians and
Right.
educating them. And I want to encourage cardiologists when they do this that that we appreciate it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that should be mentioned. So if you want to maybe put it out there a little bit somewhere
Okay.
for others to just show a little bit of, how do I say, recognition.
Right. For what she's doing, and how easy it is to implement these changes.
Yeah, and not many doctors would allow you to film
Oh, for sure.
an appointment. And she was just like, you are a huge part of, this was before us. She did mention it in the video, but she said I was a huge part, played a huge part in this new project in collaborating cardiology and birthing professionals in labor and delivery, and that I helped raise we did. PPCM Fund hasn't received any donations from it, but we have raised the Women's Center, millions of dollars
Uh-huh.
through my experience, through taking this to the next level. I'm hopeful that they include us in that, but either way, it wouldn't matter. Just the fact that it's getting out there and that women are being saved and they are now motivated into this collaboration, that's where it is so important for the two teams, because it is a gray area. It's a heart, it's a heart up here, the baby's down here, but it's a pregnancy induced heart failure. So the
Right.
two need to come together. And that's where I feel like, if anybody can do it, I believe in Dr. Watson. I believe in her heart team, and I believe in Barbara Streisand taking this on for women's heart health. So hopefully this will resonate, and the this last interview,
Uh-huh.
if you check it out. I don't know. I think there's only 7 views right now. I'm surprised that
Okay.
there's not a lot more. But yeah, check it out, put it
I
out
will.
there, and see. Hopefully, people will recognize her support
What she's doing. Mhm.
for survivors, for women
Yep.
survivors, as well
Okay.
as our children's children. I think there's her, and I think one other woman in Florida. With Save the Mommies. She's an ER woman.
Uh-huh.
She
Yes.
yeah, she's actually stepping forward as well. She's wonderful to step forward and show face. I think that the more the medical community steps up as well. And there's very few, but even all it takes is one.
Right.
So fingers crossed. Well, thank you, and have a very lovely day. And
you too. Thank you very much.
Is there anything else that you would like to include that you think you left out?
No, I don't think so.
You covered everything?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
thank
have a
you.
lovely day.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us and listening to the PPCM Fund podcast. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. PPCM's Painful Truth is made possible through the generous support of donors like you. Help us spread the awareness by donating at ppcmfund.com or click the link below to become a member through Ko-fi. Have a great day.